In this video, I want to talk about how we find the maximum or minimum of a quadratic function. So when we have a quadratic function, right, we know it looks like a parabola. And a parabola looks like this, right? So it looks something like that. Or if it's a downward facing parabola, it looks something like this. And so in an upward facing parabola, the minimum, right, is here. This is the minimum. And it doesn't have a maximum, right, because it keeps going forever. And kind of the opposite is true for a downward facing parabola. This is the maximum point. And it doesn't have a minimum because it keeps going on forever. So my question to you is, where is this point? What else do we call this? If you said we call it the vertex, you are right. So we also call this point the vertex of a parabola. So basically, an upward facing parabola has a minimum, and the minimum happens at the vertex. A downward facing parabola has a maximum, and the maximum happens at the vertex. So the important thing to remember is that the maximum or minimum happens at the vertex. And the maximum or minimum value is the y value, right? So the maximum or the minimum is the y value, and it occurs at the x value. So whatever the y value is, that's what the maximum or the minimum is. It is the maximum or the minimum. Depending on what kind of parabola it is. And then the x value is where it occurs. Okay, so let's use that to try to figure out if we can find the maximum or the minimum value of this parabola. So, first question, does this have a maximum or a minimum? Well, it's positive, right? So that means that the leading coefficient is positive, that is. So that means that it's an upward facing parabola, right? It faces up, which means it has a minimum. So it has a minimum. And then the minimum happens at the vertex. So let's figure out where the vertex is. So remember that the vertex, the x-coordinate of the vertex is negative b, so negative 2 over 2 times a, which is 1. So it's negative 1. To find out what that minimum value is, we need to find the function, the y value of negative 1. So f of negative 1 is negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 8. So this is 1 minus 2 minus 8 is negative 9. So the minimum value is negative 9, and the minimum occurs at negative 1. Or you could also say, you might want to say, just for clarity, that the minimum occurs at x equals negative 1. So the minimum occurs when x equals negative 1, and that minimum value, the lowest value this parabola ever reaches, is negative 9. And that's how you find the maximum or minimum of a quadratic function.